Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, top 10 players for this Nebraska program heading into 2024. And I think we'll start with this, Dill. First rule of this episode, the Nebraska fans, let me have it in the comment section. I feel sick to my stomach leaving some players off of this list. And I think that really shows you why we're so deep on or so high on this Nebraska team heading into 2024, because this roster is incredibly deep. It has so much talent, so much proven talent across the board on both sides of the football. Let me have it in the comment section. Tell me what players I might be low on. And before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, the Nebraska fans. And it's no secret the boys love talking this program, and the amount of support you guys continue to show to the fellas. And it truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And again, much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. And Dill, I'm going to go with, there's a couple players on this list for me that are kind of just my guys. Teddy P is one of my guys. And you take a look at his career. This was a guy that I was so fired up about coming out of high school. I mean, the length, the frame, the athleticism for that size, and you just haven't really seen much healthy football from a guy like Teddy over the last couple of years. But when he got healthy towards the end of the 2023 season, you saw him kind of really take that jump. And if you get a 12 healthy games from Teddy in 2024, I think you're looking at one of the better tackles in the Big Ten heading into that 2024 season. Give me Teddy P as my number 10 player for this Nebraska program.
And when you talk about Nebraska probably not having the guys right now who are going to be like the all-American type player yet, I mean, you see the younger guys as they recruit a little better. You see some guys in those classes that are coming for sure. But when you look at this offensive line, I think you have a bunch of really good players. For me, I probably go Benhart as their best offensive lineman just because how steady he's been over the past handful of years and just so dependable, really good. But I mean, if you do a little bit more of a projection, you look at what Teddy Prochazka was last year compared to 2022 and probably being one of the prime benefactors of the Matt Rhule system and how much better he's developed guys at that position, you can definitely argue him as the best lineman because when you saw him play a little bit more physical, you've only seen the athleticism, the length, some of the traits, but I thought the play strength really picked up last year. And when you saw him play that way, he was
in the run game, I thought Teddy P looked about as good as we've seen him in the run game. That was kind of what he struggled with early on is, moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. You saw him take that step and leaving out Ben Scott, leaving out Justin Evans-Jenkins. Like, I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to bet on the upside that Teddy P brings to this Nebraska roster in 2024. Going to my number 9 player, Dill, another one of those probably my guys, and somebody that I just think flew under the radar, and I say hands up, probably didn't give him his flowers enough during the 2023 season. That's Jamari Butler. A couple of things that I love about Jamari Butler. One, the versatility. This is a guy that you saw him really make an impact for this defense in multiple different spots, right? Whether he's playing off the edge, whether he's kicking down to the 3-tech. We always talk about this, the true commodity that Tony White really requires of this Nebraska defense is versatility. Guys that can move all around the field, do a lot of different things. I don't think you have to look much further than a guy like Jamari Butler in terms of how he impacted this team from a multitude of different spots in 2023.
And he's going to be one. I think he's going to be helped so much by the emergence of some of the young guys. If they can get Leonard going, get Riley Van Poppel going, and get them to be taking up more of those 3-techs, 4 eyes, those type of positions. Because again, I like Jamari. He was solid there for sure, but his best football is on the edge, being more that outside linebacker, defensive end, playing on the edge. I thought the way he impacted the run game out there, really, really good. And he's probably not the pure pass rusher that Princewill is, who I'm sure we'll be seeing later in this list. But I really think he's so disruptive in the run game and in a good enough pass rusher to make it work. And I think he's going to be helped a ton by playing more on the edge.
Talk about Princewill. And the more I think about this, the more I just don't feel good about having him as the number 8 player. Now, if you were to project Princewill, I think there is an absolute chance he's a top 3 player on this Nebraska team in 2024. And I think the crazy part is we talked about him extensively about 12 months ago as a true freshman to watch, but kind of how we talked about him was, hey, super high upside, a rare athlete coming off the edge, probably needs a year at the college level to get that physical maturation. He was much better than I thought he was going to be, and I was really high on him heading into his college football career. He was third on the team in quarterback hurries, is probably the best pure pass rusher on this Nebraska program. If you're looking at a guy that could go for double-digit sacks on this Nebraska defensive line, I think you look no further than a guy like Princewill heading into 2024.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you. I mean, you said it, like you might be a little low.
Little
I
low.
kind of think you are a little bit too, just because again, there's not that many guys with that pass rush ability in all the country, and especially not on Nebraska. I think when he physically fills out a little bit more, I mean, he's going to be such a weapon because you saw the instincts, the ability to win inside, ability to win outside, had good moves. If he can add some of that power into that game a little bit, I think he can be so dynamic, so disruptive, and so
super developed. And from not a physical standpoint, I think there's still room for that. I think he did make some physical maturation strides, but talk about like pass rush IQ, having a deep tool bag of pass rush moves, which is only going to get better going into year 2, year 3. That was probably what was most impressive. Like a guy like Princewill. Number 8 seems a little bit low. Going to number 7, Malcolm Hartzog. This has just been a staple for Nebraska over the last couple of years, and another guy that I think could probably be a top 5 player on this roster heading into 2024. If you were to be kind of nitpicky about Malcolm Hartzog, there's 2 things. One, make those game-changing plays. I thought there were some opportunities on the film for him to, create some turnovers and kind of create those game-winning plays for this Nebraska defense that he probably left on the field in 2023. And then secondly, got beat on a couple deep balls that you don't want to see. But you talk about down in, down out. This is a phenomenal cornerback that, most importantly, tackles so well in space. And you talk about what made this Nebraska defense so good. They did not miss many tackles, especially with those second-level defenders. Malcolm Hartzog, an 8% missed tackle rate. I mean, this is just a damn solid cornerback for Nebraska heading into 2024 here.
And frankly, a guy you hope just gets better in his second year in the Tony White system, because you go back to his 2022 year. I mean, we were talking about him as like a first-round draft pick possibly. Yeah. He's got those type of traits. Again, I don't think the junior season was quite as good as you probably would have hoped, just given what he looked like in 22. So if he just makes those strides and plays a little bit more comfortable, is more on point with what he's doing in the second year of the system, I think you get a much better year out of him.
Going to number 6, and this is your guy. You're probably going to give me some heat about being a little too low on him once again, Javin Wright. And you go back to the end of the season in 2023, he really settled into that off-ball linebacker role. This is a guy that, started his career for Nebraska as a 3-star cornerback recruit, right? He weighed 190 pounds as he came into Lincoln, and he plays a little bit of safety. He comes off the edge a little bit. He kind of settled in to that off-ball linebacker role, and Dill, he was so good at it. You talk about modern-day off-ball linebackers. This is exactly what you want. A guy that can go sideline to sideline, has a ton of length in his arms to get his hands into throwing windows. When he puts it together, kind of between the ears, it kind of develops those off-ball linebacker instincts. You talk about guys that have tremendous upside, like we talked about with Princewill. You kind of throw Javin Wright into that category because the physical traits, he's got everything you want in that off-ball linebacker spot.
Yeah, and you can see that kind of story arc that you kind of laid out there in his game, just the ability to go sideline to sideline, really good taking on blocks, shedding them. I think a guy who, again, we kind of talk about this is a bit of a projection for me. I think I had him as number 4 player on Nebraska's team coming into this year, just because I think when he settled in at that off-ball linebacker spot, I thought he started dominating towards the end of the year, was playing so good. I think he's one of those guys who, again, I don't think they totally knew what to do with him at first. And then once they figured out, why don't we just put him as the middle linebacker? I mean, he's one of those guys with the traits to go day 2, day 1.
Yeah, and you talk about versatility as well. From being kind of an edge rusher at times, he can get after the passer. 12 quarterback hurries. Tony White likes to bring pressure from a lot of different areas of the football field. Having a off-ball linebacker that can be extremely productive as a pass rusher, another massive asset for Tony White. Going into number 5, Tommi Hill, another guy that played a lot of wide receiver for Nebraska in 2022. And in 2023, you saw him really put it together. Talk about game changer, led the team in pass breakups, led the team in interceptions. This is a guy with a ton of upside. He kind of put it together in 2023. And I think for Nebraska fans, this is a guy that checks a lot of the traits you want in that athletic profile at that cornerback spot. If he takes another step in 2024, again, you're looking at one of the better cornerbacks in the Big Ten heading into the fall here.
And the Nebraska's are big time. You'll take the ball away as much as he does from that cornerback spot. It's so impressive. And I think that's kind of what bumps him into that,
Yeah.
yeah, that upper echelon of where you kind of want in terms of what college cornerbacks you're looking for. Frankly, NFL as well is just when you have the opportunity to take the ball away, can you do it? I mean, those are the type of plays. If you do it a couple times, you can win a couple games on the back of it. I thought, again, you see that ability like that Minnesota play, just the instincts, the headiness, just that kind of sticks out to me. Just having a sense of when he can jump routes and when he can. I'm really impressed with him. I'm kind of with you. I think he's right up there with anyone on Nebraska.
Another thing to add: 58 yards yards after the catch given up, extremely low number. This is a guy that does not let wide receivers operate after the catch, just like Malcolm Hartzog does not miss tackles in open space, which is something that I don't think a ton of people talk about at that cornerback spot. But we saw with a guy like Kermani McLean, if you can't tackle in space, you become a liability for a defense. Tommy Hill, Malcolm Hartzog, they get it done from a physicality standpoint. Number 4, I believe the only transfer that we have talking about, and that's going to be Jamal Banks, my guy from Wake Forest. Talk about the biggest impact from a newcomer in the Big Ten. We might be looking at Jamal Banks because you look at that Nebraska team last year. Yes, we've made it very clear the quarterback play was not where it needed to be. They didn't really have that go-to wide receiver, especially when a guy like Billy Kemp got dinged up towards the end of the year. Right, when it's 3rd and 6 and you need a wide receiver to create separation and move the chains, they didn't have that wide receiver. Jamal Banks is that kind of guy. He was the go-to wide receiver at Wake Forest in 2023. He's very good in the red zone with 13 touchdowns over the last 2 years. I think Jamal Banks represents that true wide receiver one, possession wide receiver that Nebraska sorely missed in 2023. I think this is a guy that could go for 1,000 yards for the Nebraska Cornhuskers in 2024 here.
And you kind of think about what he was doing at Wake. I mean, if they had better play in 2023 around him, their offense was dreadful at Wake Forest. A guy certainly should be a 1,000-yard receiver, just ultra dependable. And when you kind of talk about who's like, again, those guys Nebraska really needs to kind of change their landscape a little bit, change how their season went last year, he's right there because they needed a wide receiver who's just dependably open, can catch the ball in traffic. It just didn't have enough of it last year. He's going to be that guy.
It's not always flashy with Jamal Banks, but he just consistently gets the job done. I've seen it firsthand at Wake Forest over the last 2 years. Getting into our top 3, I'm going to go with the wrestler Nash. And Nash was so solid in 2023, and we kind of talked about this. You look at the inside of this Nebraska defensive line, name me a better interior defensive line duo than Nash and Ty Robinson. And you take a look at Nash, 16 run stops, was second on the team, 8 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. He gives you that nice combination of playing that zero time. I mean, he played kind of that nose position most of the time for Nebraska. It's hard to put up 8.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 40 tackles. That was top 10 on this Nebraska defense. He's productive at that nose tackle spot. That is absolutely a massive commodity. Give me Nash at number 3 here.
And just looking at what him and Ty Robinson did last year, like you just never get an argument. Those two were as valuable as anyone on that team. They were certainly the leaders on that defense, just making it so difficult to run the ball. Really good pass rushers for that size and kind of their play style and what they're kind of asked to do. So just versatile, big physical guy. I mean, those two are like, you kind of look ahead. So much of their success is going to be built on just their ability to dominate inside.
I have Ty at 2, and I think that might be a little weird from if you're not a Nebraska fan, just looking at the numbers, right? Ty had 8.5 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. Ty Robinson, or I should say Nash had those numbers. Ty Robinson, 4 tackles for a loss, 1 sack. Nash was more productive on the box score, and you're really picking hairs, picking between those two, Dill, but when you watch the film, there was not a more disruptive presence on this Nebraska defense than Ty Robinson. Right, who led the team in quarterback hurries at 20, 9 run stops, but an average depth of tackle of 0.6 yards down the field. This is a guy that can eat up double teams, that can shed blocks. I think probably could have been maybe a late day 2 pick had he declared to the NFL draft, comes back. We kind of talked about it. Nash and Ty, just massive, massive commodities for this Tony White defense. And going to my number 1 player on this Nebraska team, I'm going to go with Isaac Gifford. Now, is Isaac Gifford the NFL draft prospect that Malcolm Hartzog or Tommy Hill or Ty Robinson is? No, he's probably not. But you talk about the chess piece for Tony White's defense. it was Isaac Gifford. Name me a player across the country that led his team in tackles at 86 tackles, led his team in run stops with 18 run stops, and also was second on the team in pass breakups. This is a guy that is asked to do so many different things, whether it's playing as a slot cornerback, playing as a free safety, playing that center field spot, coming in as that third linebacker, playing as that box safety. He does so many different things, at a high level for this Nebraska team. You talk about most valuable player on this Nebraska defense in 2023. In my mind, it was certainly Isaac Gifford.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, just the way Tony White asks those safeties to kind of be the linchpin of what he's doing in terms of being disruptive, being able to disguise, put quarterbacks under, or just confuse quarterbacks a little bit. I think he's exactly that guy, and just his development into being able to be a little bit more smooth in coverage and being able to line up pretty much everywhere. Because you've seen the moments, good run stops before, but I just think this year he took such a big step in terms of what he was doing in coverage, being able to play that free safety role and play with a lot of range. I'm with you. I mean, just how dynamic he was and how well he was able to allow Tony White to be able to confuse quarterbacks. And I know we did a little bit of a breakdown on him at some point when we talked about the secondary for Nebraska. I mean, he's as important as it gets for them.
All right, to close out, I do just want to say some names. Just so it makes me sleep better at night, knowing that I did mention these guys when we're breaking down some of the best players on Nebraska. Dante Dowdle at the running back spot. That's a guy that I couldn't put him in the top 10 yet, but I think could be a massive commodity for Nebraska in 2024. Cam Lenhart got left off the list. We like to talk about Princewill U. Cam Lenhart struggled with some injuries at times. I think that's another guy that brings some massive upside. We talked about Justin Evans-Jenkins, but I would talk about Deshaun Singleton coming back from injury. Again, hard to put him at the top 10 list because he didn't play a ton due to injury. I don't know if there's a better player on that Nebraska team before he went down with the injury. So many players that you could have chose from. Let me know in the comments section where I might be sleeping on some players. I wanted to include some of those young cats at the wide receiver role as well. Appreciate y'all rocking.
I know, don't you just want to put Malachi Coleman in there?
Yeah.
It's like I want to do it, but it's tough when you got Jamal Banks, who's so dependable and proven.
100%. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.